There we go. Well, thank you everyone for coming this evening. I'll do some introductions first of all, and then I'll hand over to Helen, who has very kindly agreed to join us from the national team to talk to you about Give2Go Green. So I'm James Rolls. I'm the Net Zero Carbon Officer for the Diocese of St Edmundsbury and Ipswich. And with me we have Emma Denton, who is our Giving Advisor in the Diocese of St Edmundsbury and Ipswich as well. And we also have Sarah Chaga, who's joined us too from the Diocese of Exeter. And Sarah, I believe you're the Creation Care Engagement Officer, if I've got that right. Brilliant.
That is correct, yes.
Lovely. So what I'd say is if we could all keep ourselves on mute until the end, because there'll be time for questions. So any questions you have, either save them to the end or pop them in the chat so we can read them when we've finished the webinar. But without further ado, I'll pass over to Helen, who is the National Fundraising Advisor for the Church of England.
Thank you so much, James. Really pleased to be here and really delighted to see churches interested in taking part in Give2Go Green. Bear with me one moment while I just get my slide screen sharing sorted out. My computer is not very happy about being in hot London. So I'm hoping that works. Brilliant. I think that's working. So as James said, my name is Helen Semkis. I am the National Fundraising Advisor for the Church of England, working in the national church and leading on the church's work to fundraise and support churches and dioceses and all the other many building types that we have in the Church of England on our journey to be carbon net zero by 2030. One of those streams is Give2Go Green, and in the next sort of 30 minutes, I'll be telling you all about the scheme and key information about how to apply, hopefully make it as straightforward as possible for you. Before I even start, I would really just urge you to be encouraged. Don't be put off by any of the hoops that it might seem you need to jump through. We're really, really keen for churches to take part. And you have a very good chance of being accepted if you apply. So please do go away from this feeling encouraged and not put off, even if it seems like I'm giving lots of information and loopholes and things to jump through. Sorry, hoops, not loopholes. Definitely not loopholes. So what is Give2Go Green? Well, it's a pilot scheme in the first part of the Church of England's Net Zero programme. And that the first 3 years of the programme are all about testing and exploring how the Church of England as a whole is going to become carbon net zero by 2030. And one of those ways is how can we best leverage the funds that the church commissioners have committed to put forward to achieve this goal, and how can we leverage those to raise additional funding? And so Give2Go Green came about out of that ambition. And it's a small scale, quick wins style fund, and grants of up to £10,000 are available for churches, parishes, in dioceses. We're anticipating around 30 churches in each diocese taking part, but that could vary depending on how much churches apply for. And the idea is to fund quick wins, not necessarily very easy to fundraise otherwise for projects in churches and church halls, and I'll be talking a lot more about the types of projects that can apply. Once you have applied to take part and you've been successful and you do your fundraising, once you receive the grant from us, which you receive up front, you must then complete your work within 12 months. So essentially you have time to do your fundraising and then 12 months to do the project work that you've applied to do. The critical element is that you need to do your fundraising first, and I'll be talking much more about the digital fundraising and support that we've got available. But the idea is that you do your fundraising in a compressed, intense 6-week window, sometime in the autumn of this year, so between the 1st of September and the 15th of December. And that might sound absolutely terrifying to you, but this is the second round of the pilot project, and we did run the first round with Exeter and Leeds in February and March of this year, with 26 churches, all of whom said this is not going to be possible, we're quite afraid to take part. And in fact, between them, they managed to raise almost all of the money they needed, and many churches raised twice over what they needed to raise, so £163,000 in total. So we are going to make it very manageable and achievable for you to raise that money in the 6-week window. That is a summary. I'm going to go into each of the different areas of Give to Go Green now in a bit more detail. So what do we mean by match funding? Well, I mean that the church commissioners will match £1 to £1 money you raise in your church using our special donations software that we will give you access to if you're successful in applying to the project. And that software is powered by a company called Give a Little, who are the Church of England's recommended online and digital giving supplier. And we have a long-standing relationship with them. We've been working hard to raise the profile of digital giving across the Church of England. And so this project is an add-on to that, and is part of our drive to grow awareness and use of digital giving in this age that's increasingly becoming cashless. So we will match money that you raise through Give Little, and we will give you all the help you need to get set up and get confident using digital giving, which I'll talk a little bit more about later anyway. We can't match gift aid. That's not to say that donations taken through this project are not eligible for gift aid. You can claim gift aid on them if they are eligible in the usual way, but you need to think of that as a bonus to your campaign. We can't match the gift aid part of a donation. So, for example, if somebody donates £100 to your church, you would be able to claim an additional £25 in gift aid. We would only be able to match that £100 that they've raised. Equally, we are only able to match money given online or through a contactless card reader through Give a Little. We can't match cash, checks, bank transfers, CAF vouchers, any other kind of giving. And you might be thinking at this point, oh no, that's how everybody wants to give to our church and how they have given historically. Well, a key part of this project is about upskilling people with digital giving and encouraging people to give it a go. We're not saying that these other forms of giving are not important. They absolutely are. But for this particular project, it's all about digital giving. And as I mentioned before, once you've done the fundraising, we will pay the grant directly to you at that point. So you will have the cash available to do your work. We won't be, and then we'll be asking you to report on progress, rather than other grants you might have received in the past where the grant actually comes to you once you've done the work and you have to provide invoices. And this table on the right just gives you an indication of your rough project cost and sets out that you raise this amount and we will match that amount. So on to fundraising. Well, why are we asking you to do this 6-week period of fundraising? Well, the key point is to avoid cannibalizing fundraising that you might need to do other times of the year, and also to stop too much time being taken up by this when you might want to be just promoting regular giving amongst your congregation anyway. So the idea is it's a focused period where you can really get your congregation and your local community involved in that 6-week window. And one of the really nice things that we found from round one is that churches really did engage with their local communities on this. I mean, if you think your church is really invested in caring for creation, you know, even if people aren't coming to church or they aren't Christians, many people are obviously very motivated to work against the climate crisis, and so will find your church's project engaging, be willing to fundraise, and willing to take part and raise awareness of your project in a way that many of the churches in round one were very way They were absolutely delighted, and it felt like a really missional piece of work, as well as an important way of reducing their carbon footprint. And I think the main thing I would want to get across to you in this webinar is that at all stages of this project, lots of support is available, both from us in the national team and at a diocese level. So we will be running webinars, surgeries. We've got handbooks and resources for all the different aspects of the project, including fundraising. We've got this really nice fundraising handbook, which sets out the 6 weeks, breaking down about what you need to think about when, how to do all the different things that you'll need to think about within your fundraising campaign. We'll also have resources available that you can customize for your own church, posters and leaflets and logos. and will help you to make sure that the fundraising campaign you want to do for your project is rooted in your church's vision, so it feels really local, even though you're taking part in this national campaign. And then finally, we will help you to help other people embrace digital giving, and we will give you all the support you need with that. So what is digital giving? Well, if you're not familiar, I know the team in St Ed's and have been doing and in Exeter too, have been doing amazing work to raise awareness, and both dioceses have benefited from the National Church's contactless device rollout, where we've been giving out free or subsidised contactless card readers to churches in both dioceses. We're coming to the end of that project now. I think we're about to do diocese number 41, and then we will be finished. But what do I actually mean by digital giving? Well, I mean donations that are given either through a contactless donation device or online. So that might be with a smartwatch or a SumUp card reader or an integrated contactless device. And online giving, we mean on a web page accessed via a mobile phone or a computer, or via a QR code. If you're not familiar with QR codes, almost everybody is nowadays post-COVID, but you scan it with the camera app on your phone. You can actually use this example here. It's a live one that will take you to the Church of England's digital giving pages. But why in particular are we saying this project has to be digital giving? Well, there's two elements to it. Firstly, it's an easy way to do match funding. We, as you can imagine, don't have the resources. It really is just me running this project from the National Church. Don't have the resources to sort of verify and audit paperwork that shows cash raised, etc., etc. And we've made a substantial investment in digital giving already. And so we really want to kind of piggyback on that and harness that and make it accessible and help people to use it for fundraising. The other element to it, which will become apparent to you if you apply and are successful, is that it's actually an easy way for us to give you the grant. So churches will need to set up a Stripe account if they're not already using Stripe. And that is the mechanism by which we will pay the actual grant money to you through your Stripe account. So how does digital giving work? Well, as I mentioned before, we've got a relationship with Give a Little, and as part of Give2Go Green, we asked them to develop this new match fundraising software, which allows us to understand how much you have raised so that we can give you the grant to show how much matched to how much you have raised. And it looks like this. It's absolutely, it looks absolutely brilliant. You can customize all the fields. It will show the target that you need to raise, and you get really brilliant reporting back from Give a Little as well. So that's like the shop front, basically, the window, if you like, that people give through. In the background, you have two merchant providers, SumUp, who you may well be familiar with if you have a SumUp card reader or you have a contactless device in your church, and also Stripe, who are an online giving provider. They essentially move the money around in the background between your donor's bank account and your bank account. So you'll need to get set up with all three if you're not set up already, but it's straightforward and we will help you. We've got very detailed guides and videos for how to get set up. You need to get set up for all three through parish buying. If you're not already using that, you need to do it through parish buying, because that will give you access to the Church of England's nationally negotiated reduced transaction fees, so you get the best value for money doing it through parish buying. And this is just a really nice example from a church that took part in round one, St Mary's Emsay in the Diocese of Leeds. And this is how they set out what they needed to do. And you can see here on the left, they had an arrow pointing to their contactless card reader. They have a pay as giving station just pictured off screen that you can't see. And on the right, they had a QR code for people who didn't want to wait around. They had leaflets and materials available. And I just really like this quote. Having 100% match funding was a powerful motivation to get people engaged. We are in Yorkshire. That kind of incentive is not going to be ignored. So I hope this gives you the impression of the kind of setup you may have in your church, but all sorts of different kinds of fundraising activity took place. People did sponsored walks. There was a teddy a parachute drop off a church tower. There were lots and lots of coffee mornings, concerts, events. Churches did sponsor a pew projects for under pew heating. Any kind of project you can think of, really, people did in the first round. And a few of the churches that took part in the first round have agreed to come and talk to this second cohort. So those of you that are successful will get their experience as well and advice from them. So that will be hopefully very useful as well. So just to take a step back, really, why are we doing this? Well, I'm hoping that you're all familiar with the Church of England's ambition, which was put forward at General Synod, that we will be aiming to be net zero carbon by 2030. And the way in which we're doing that is set out in the net zero carbon route map. If you haven't read that document, it's a really, really interesting read that sets out all of the things that all aspects of the areas of the church will need to do. James, I assume you're happy to send the slides out tomorrow. If you click on these links, it should take you to these documents. But specifically for churches, if you're not familiar with the practical path to net zero carbon for churches document, I'd recommend that you have a look at that, because that sets out specifically what's required for churches to do, from the smallest and easiest sort of gutter repair, window coverings, door curtains, to substantial reordering projects with different kinds of underfloor heating and ground and air source heat pumps. So there really is a huge scope of different types of projects. But obviously some of the key things that you can do yourself and quickly are also some of the things that we can fund through Give to Go Green. And if you haven't done an energy audit, a good way to get started is to use the Church of England's self-guided checklist that you can access here. And that it walks you through your church building, encourages you to look at different things that you have or may not have, as a sort of almost quick and easy way to identify those essential energy actions that will in the first place reduce energy wastage in your church, before you look to do some of the bigger things. And so what are the projects that you can actually apply for Give to Go Green? Well, fundamentally, they are heating and lighting projects. And in terms of putting in new technologies in your churches, these are going to be probably the bread and butter projects that most churches apply for. You can see here a range of different things, and all of these projects were represented in round one. From new LED lighting systems inside and outside church buildings, to heated pew cushions, to infrared solar radiant panels, and also infrared radiant panels, not solar. I'll talk about solar in a minute. To under pew heaters. And in round one, we had churches applying on a big and small scale for these. So churches applying for 1 or 2 pew heaters, to churches applying for a bigger project amount for pew heaters across their whole building. But there are also a range of maintenance things that contribute to reducing energy wastage in your church that are also eligible for Give to Go Green. And I'll talk about the application pack in a minute if you haven't looked at it already, but we have a list basically of all the projects. So these are things like draft proofing, roof and gutter maintenance, things that might have come out in your quinquennial inspection, through to heating and lighting, managing the systems you've got better, replacing or upgrading systems, doing things that you're probably unlikely to get funding from anywhere else, like magnetic sediment sludge filters, which I don't think are commonly funded by the main Church of England, common funders to churches. So this is an opportunity to get funding for things that are not so attractive to other funders, shall we say. There are also some temporary solutions, which if you can make a good enough case, you can apply for. So that might be hiring or purchasing electric heaters if your heating system is not fit for purpose, or while you're looking to do something else. And it might be that you hire those or purchase them, and then you work with the diocese to give them to another church that's going to go through the same process in a bit of time. So that's something to consider as well. Then there are some other things. I mentioned heated chair cushions already, which is a really important and useful tool in the kind of heat the person, not the place mantra. But in the other section, O2 is solar PV, and we are willing to fund solar panels and solar panel projects and batteries, things like that, where a church can demonstrate that it has completed all the other measures that I've just talked about to transition to net zero carbon. And this is the next logical step. So churches applying will probably have done an energy audit, and they can show that they've completed all the other measures in that energy audit. And this is the next obvious step that will really take them on their net zero carbon journey. So if you are thinking of applying for solar PV, you definitely can, but you will need to show that you've done all these other things. And this is the most obvious step. And that's something that I know James will be very happy to talk about with you and to discuss in more detail if you've got any questions about that, or you're not sure whether this is the next obvious step for you. So in the application form, I'll be talking more about that in a minute, but you might be wondering whether what the kind of energy and carbon saving from some of these seemingly small activities that I've mentioned are. And we've got a document on the website where the application forms are that actually give an indication of the carbon emissions, sort of grouped in groups, in percentage brackets, and you can see that there. And we're really keen to fund a range of projects. So if you want to do, several lower and medium interventions, don't be put off if somebody else is just doing one high intervention. We want to fund a range of projects, although I will say that if we're oversubscribed, we probably will have to assess and make sure we have a balance across the churches taking part to make sure we are getting a reasonable amount of carbon saving from the projects taking part. But at this point, I think it's likely that we probably won't be oversubscribed, and so I would encourage you to apply for any type of project on that list. The final thing to say on the types of projects you can do is that if your church is very innovative or got an idea that actually doesn't feature on that list, we're very willing to consider it, and the national church have to just approve that, basically. So please do get in touch with James and or with me, and we can get that idea vetted and agreed or not. That sounds overly complicated, but as you can imagine, there are lots of new technologies coming to market all the time in this area, and we just want to make sure that churches are doing using ones that are sensible, that we think will have a good impact, and so that's why we need to get that approved. But it's a very easy process, so just drop James or me an email if you have got an idea that isn't represented on this list. So the key information you've all been waiting for: how do I actually apply and get this grant? So on the website, the link is here. You need to do 5 key things. Firstly, read through the application pack, which sets out in more detail even than I've gone into today, what you need for each section of the application form, the types of projects you can do, where to get help. We've got a really comprehensive FAQ section, and read through that. And then if you've obviously got any further questions, do get back in touch. But hopefully that should answer lots of the questions that you might have as you come to do the project. Come to do the application form, sorry. Then you need to actually decide on your project and ideally obtain 2 quotes, or be in the process of getting quotes, so that you have an indicative cost, so you actually know how much grant you're applying for. A compulsory part of the application process is to complete the Church of England's energy footprint tool, and that is part of the parish finance return system. You need your recent utility bills. You put that information in, and that is how we are able to map the carbon footprint of the Church of England. So it's really essential that your church does that before you apply. And the deadline for that is actually the 24th of July. So you need to do that before you do your application form for Give to Go Green, because our deadline is slightly later than that. Crucially, you need to identify what permissions are required for your project. So many of the things on the list are actually only require List B permission from an archdeacon, but some will require a faculty. You don't need to have got that faculty by the time you apply, but you need to have identified what permissions you will need, because essentially you've got until the end of next year to do your work and get all the permissions that you need, but you do just need to have started that process, and we will want you to tell us in the application form that you have sent an email to the DAC or have had a phone call, so that you've kicked that process off, so you're not finding as you come to do the work that you haven't got the permissions that you need. And finally, you need to complete the application form. Now, the form is a Microsoft Forms form, which is not the most user-friendly, and I will hold my hands up in advance and say I'm sorry for that. It's the only system that we have available to us. But we've got on that website here, we've got a sample printed application form that you can download, and you can see all the questions that you need to fill in advance. So you can produce all the information and then just put it into the form, because you can't save it as you go. So hopefully it will be quite straightforward as you do it. But again, please do get in touch with me if you've got any questions as you're going through the form, and we'd be happy to help. Here are a few key things that you need to know for the application that might not be obvious to you, or you need to think about in advance. The first is you will need to tell us your church code, which is your church's assigned code from the Church of England, so we can identify you in case you just call yourself St Mary's in the application form. And this is found on your A Church Near You page. If you go to that video link there, it shows you where to find it. You'll also need to tell us about your previous fundraising and experience of running a building project in your church. Again, that's not going to count. That will only really, we'll be looking at to kind of assess the suitability of your church to take part. So if you don't have a lot of fundraising experience, or indeed you haven't run major building projects in your church for a long time, that's not a problem. But we just want you to tell us how you think you're going to manage it. Have you got a committee of people who are competent to run the project in your church? Similarly, if you're already using digital giving, it would be great to hear about that, so we know where to aim our resources and who to support. And finally, we'll want to know about how this project fits in with your church's journey towards being carbon net zero, and measures you may have taken already to reduce your carbon footprint. Have you had an energy audit, for example? Have you registered with the Arosha Eco Church scheme? Those are all kinds of information we'll be looking for in the application form. We're nearly coming to the end of my presentation now, but the final thing is assessment criteria. So how will we be actually assessing applications? And at the moment, we haven't got a huge amount of demand, so you are very likely to be successful if you do apply. But if we are oversubscribed, and we also will still be assessing applications on their suitability. First and foremost, as I already mentioned, if you haven't done the energy footprint tool, we won't be able to approve your application. But apart from that, we'll be looking at the suitability of your church to run the project. We'll want you to demonstrate that you are ready to do this project and this fundraising, and that you're willing to do it, even if it's a completely new way of working for you, even if you're nervous about digital giving in your church. We just want to see your appetite to give it a go and be willing to try it. We will be looking, as I mentioned already, at the anticipated carbon reduction of the projects that you are planning. And then if you have done an energy audit or any kind of energy assessment where this fits in with the output of that. So is this the next logical step, or are there other things that you should be doing first? So just to summarise, the key elements that you need to set in place for this project are to kind of create a team of people who are going to work with you on the project, on the fundraising, complete the energy footprint tool and parish returns, If you are successful, you will need to set up and get using Give a Little with Stripe and SumUp. So you could start thinking about that now already. Even if your church isn't successful, digital giving is a great thing to have in your arsenal. So good to think about. And then quotes, thinking about DAC approval as necessary, and if you need to raise any other money for your project. So if your project is going to cost more than £20,000 in total, you're going to need some additional income. And most churches in round one were just putting in, they knew that, for example, if they were applying for a solar PV project that was going to cost £35,000 in total, £10,000 came from fundraising, £10,000 came from a grant from us, and most churches actually were putting in the remainder of funds from their own reserves. But if your project is gonna have bigger costs, you need to think about that too. So the next steps: firstly, apply. As I mentioned, the deadline is at the end of July, so please do apply in good time. And then if you are successful, we'll let you know at the beginning of August, and then you'll need to choose that 6-week window that you're going to fundraise in, and come along to training sessions that fit in with that. So we'll have a next steps webinar, and we'll have a range of different subject specific sessions on digital giving, tips for fundraising. If you want to use Canva, which is a design tool for creating posters and leaflets, we'll have a session on that. And then we'll have drop-in surgery sessions in the autumn to help you to get fundraising ready. My email address is here. It's giveToGoGreen@churchofengland.org, and I'm always happy to take questions at any time, or to give you some support. But I think we're also very happy to take questions now too. So I will stop sharing my screen. And await any questions if anyone has any.
It's not so much a question, Helen, but just like a comment, because I'm at Exeter. I wasn't around during the application process of Give to Go Green, but I was around during the fundraising part of it. And I've recently just done a bit of a survey, getting some quotes for our advertising here. And I just thought, when Helen, you were talking about communities getting behind green projects, could I share a direct quote from one of our churches
Please.
that took part in round one? They said, "We found this whole project was an amazing experience and brought the whole village community together, whether they are a churchgoer or not. The donations poured in and we actually raised far more than the £5,000, which we honestly thought we'd never raise in just 6 weeks." And then another comment from another person was, "People's generosity was astonishing. We learned that people care very much about their community assets." So I just thought those are two little encouraging things, that actually it can be a real missional outreach, as well as a great thing to raise money and go green in your church. Actually, people love to see that the church is doing something about the environment as well.
Thanks, Sarah. Yeah, that it just sums up so perfectly the positivity, and that's why we've been able to run this second round. We went very much into the first round of the pilot not knowing whether this was going to work as a concept, and yeah, we're thrilled that it did. So I hope that kind of positivity comes across.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, please, Jackie.
If we fundraise an event and we want to sell tickets, can we sell them through somewhere like Eventbrite? Can people pay through that? How do we sell the tickets?
So we would recommend that for Give to Go Green, you sell the tickets essentially by charging through Give a Little, basically. So asking for a donation for the ticket price, which you can do just by providing the web link to gift for the online giving page that you'll set up for your church. So you can do it through that mechanism. So all the money passes through Give to Go Green, and we can talk to you about how to do that.
Because I was going to say, would you then be able to identify who bought tickets and who was just giving a donation?
Sure. Yes. Yeah. Well. Yeah. We can work that out. Or you could just do the Eventbrite booking without charging, and then get people to actually pay on the door when they come, or something like that.
That's what one of our churches did. People booked through a booking system and then paid on arrival, contactless.
And did you find everybody turned up? if they hadn't paid?
I couldn't give you feedback on that because I wasn't at the church, so I know that that's what they did. But it went very well. I don't know if they had any no-shows, but yeah.
That's lovely, because that was one of our issues with what we were going to do to fundraise, because if we couldn't sell tickets through something, how would we then get the money? So thank you, that's really helpful.
Any other questions for now?
I've just seen Rita join. I just wanted to let Rita know that we've finished the slideshow, Rita, and we've done the presentation already. But the session's being recorded, so you will be able to see the recording of it. If no one does have any other questions, I just wanted to say thank you for Helen, really, for providing us with all that information. That was really, really useful. Yeah, and hopefully we get some applications coming through soon.